Billionaire found a black girl, asleep on his office floor. What she was holding stunned him deeply. Noah Ford stepped off the elevator at 11:47 p.m. and stopped cold. There, on the hardwood floor beside his desk, was a little girl, maybe 9 years old, asleep, curled on her side shoes still tied. Pressed against her chest a sealed envelope and a photograph worn soft at the edges. His custodian, Thomas, stood behind him, cap in hand. "She was here when I came to clean, sir, wouldn't leave. Said she had to wait for you." Noah crouched down slowly. The city glowed through the glass behind her. Who carries something this carefully, unless it matters more than anything else in the world? What was inside that envelope would change everything he thought he knew about his company, about the people he trusted most, and about the night his wife Eleanor died. Stay with us. This one will break your heart before it heals it. Noah didn't wake her right away. He stood there for a moment longer than he should have, looking down at this child who had somehow found her way into the most secured floor of his building, and decided with complete confidence that the floor beside his desk was an acceptable place to sleep. There was something almost defiant about it. Not reckless. Deliberate. Like she had calculated exactly how long she could wait and had simply budgeted her energy accordingly. Thomas hovered near the doorway. "Should I call someone Sir Building Security already asked? I told them to hold off until you—" "Yes," Noah said. "Hold off." He pulled his chair around from behind the desk and sat down in front of her, elbows on his knees. Up close, he could see the details he'd missed from standing height. Her jacket was thin for November, a faded burgundy zip-up with a small iron-on patch on the left shoulder, a yellow sun with uneven rays, the kind a child sews on herself. Her sneakers were clean but old, the white rubber toe caps gone gray. Someone had retied the left one with a different colored lace. Pink where the original was white. She was neat, cared for, but not wealthy, not even comfortable. And she was gripping that envelope like her life depended on it. Noah reached out and gently touched her shoulder. She woke up the way children do when they've been waiting for something, not startled, not groggy, but immediately present. Her eyes opened and found his face in one motion. Dark brown eyes, very still, very steady. She sat up without a word and looked at him for a long moment, the envelope still pressed flat against her chest. "You're Mr. Ford," she said. Not a question. "I am," Noah said. "And you are Madeline." She said it simply, like it was all the identification required. Then, after a breath, "I've been waiting for you." "I see that." Noah kept his voice even. "How did you get in here, Madeline?" "The side door by the parking garage. The card reader blinks twice before it locks. If you pull the handle, right when it blinks the second time, it doesn't catch." She said this without any pride, just the calm recitation of a fact she had tested and confirmed. "I watched 3 times before I tried." Noah looked at her. 9 years old, maybe. "Does your mother know where you are?" Something moved across her face fast like a cloud shadow crossing open ground. There and gone. "My mom is at St. Raphael's," she said. "She's been there since Tuesday. The doctors say she might—" She stopped, reset, lifted her chin slightly. "She made me promise to bring this to you before anything else happened. She said I had to do it myself, that I couldn't mail it or give it to anyone else." She held out the envelope. Noah's eyes dropped to it. It was standard letter-size ivory, the kind that used to come in boxes of good stationery. His name was written on the front in blue ink. Noah. One word. No last name, no title. His throat tightened before his mind caught up with why. He knew that handwriting. He had seen it on birthday cards tucked into his luggage before business trips. On sticky notes left on the bathroom mirror. On the margin of a restaurant menu once years ago when Eleanor had written "Order the halibut, trust me" in that same looping, unhurried script. He hadn't seen it in 3 years. Because 3 years ago, Eleanor Ford had died in a car accident on the Merritt Parkway on a Tuesday evening in October, and after the funeral, Noah had packed away everything with her handwriting on it into a box he had never opened. "Where did you get this?" His voice came out quieter than he intended. "My mom kept it," Madeline said. "Mrs. Eleanor gave it to her a long time ago before she died." She paused. "My mom was her assistant. Her name is Grace." Noah went very still. Grace. He remembered Grace, a quiet, competent young woman who had worked closely with Eleanor for almost 2 years. After the accident, Grace had sent a handwritten condolence note. Noah had read it once and filed it somewhere he couldn't remember. He hadn't thought of her since. "Your mother worked for my wife," he said slowly. "Yes, sir." "And Mrs. Eleanor trusted her." Madeline looked at him steadily. "She gave my mom this envelope and said to keep it safe. She said—" Madeline paused, as if recalling the exact words carefully, the way a child does when they've been asked to memorize something important. She said, "Give it to Noah when the time is right. He'll know what to do with it." She said you would know what to do with it. Noah sat back. The city hummed 34 floors below. Thomas had disappeared quietly into the hallway, leaving them alone in the low light, and the office felt smaller than it ever had, compressed somehow, like the walls had shifted a few inches inward. He turned the envelope over in his hands. The seal was intact. No one had opened it. "How long has your mother had this?" he asked. "Since before I was born," Madeline said. "She hid it in the lining of her sewing box. I only found out about it when she got sick. She told me where it was, and she made me write down your name and the address of your building." A small pause. "I looked you up, too, on the library computer. I wanted to know who you were before I came." Noah almost smiled despite himself. "She researched me." "And what did you find?" Madeline considered this seriously. "That you built your company when you were 29 with $60,000 and a storage unit. That you don't give interviews anymore. That your wife died." She looked at him directly. "I'm sorry about your wife." The simplicity of it, no performance, no awkward pivot, landed somewhere unguarded in his chest. "Thank you," he said. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a siren moved through the streets below, rose, faded. "Are you going to open it?" Madeline asked. Noah looked down at the envelope. Eleanor's handwriting. His name written the way she always wrote it. No formality, no distance. Just Noah. Like she was passing him a note in a quiet room and expected him to read it right then. His hands weren't entirely steady when he broke the seal. Inside were 3 folded pages. He drew them out slowly. The paper was the same ivory as the envelope, slightly aged at the fold lines. He opened the first page. "Noah," it began. "If you're reading this, then something happened that I couldn't stop, and I need you to know I tried." He read the first paragraph, then stopped. He read it again. The room was very quiet. Madeline watched him. She didn't ask what it said. She just sat with her hands folded in her lap, patient in the way that children are patient when they've already carried something heavy for a long time and are simply glad to have set it down. Noah looked up from the page. His face had changed, not dramatically, not the way faces change in movies with trembling lips and wide eyes. It was quieter than that. The particular stillness of a man who has just understood something that rearranges everything. "Madeline," he said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." "Okay," she said. "Did anyone follow you here tonight? Did anyone know you were coming?" She frowned, thinking. "I don't think so. I took the bus and then walked the last 6 blocks. I wore my mom's brown coat so I'd look bigger." She paused. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," Noah said. "You did exactly right." He folded the pages carefully and held them against his knee. 3 years. He had spent 3 years believing the story he'd been given: the wet road, the guardrail, the truck that had drifted lanes. He had grieved. It accepted, it built a wall around it, and moved on. Eleanor had known something was wrong. She had known. And she had been afraid, and she had trusted Grace, and quiet, careful Grace, now lying in a hospital bed, to make sure this envelope reached him. He looked at the little girl sitting across from him on his office floor at midnight, in her thin burgundy jacket and mismatched laces, who had taken a bus across the city alone, and picked a lock with the patience of someone twice her age. She said you would know what to do with it. He didn't know yet, not fully. But for the first time in 3 years, Noah Ford felt something other than the weight of what was already over. He felt the specific, clarifying fear of something that was only beginning. Noah read the letter 3 times. The first time he read it like a man trying to outrun what the words meant, fast skimming, looking for the part where it became explainable. The second time he slowed down. The third time he sat very still and let each sentence land where it was aimed. Eleanor had written it 14 months before she died. She had not been panicking when she wrote it. That was the thing that struck him hardest. The handwriting was steady, the sentences deliberate. This was not a woman writing in fear. This was a woman writing with the careful precision of someone who understood that she might not be believed, and had decided to document everything anyway. "I've been watching the quarterly transfers for 6 months," she had written. "The amounts are small enough to miss if you're not looking. But I was looking, Noah, because something Marcus said at the December dinner didn't add up, and I couldn't let it go." She had listed 3 transfer dates, 3 amounts, 3 account numbers she had traced through the company's internal ledger system access she still had from her years on the board's advisory committee access that Noah had never thought to revoke after she stepped down. Then she had written something that made the back of his neck go cold. "I told Marcus I found an accounting discrepancy. I didn't tell him what I found specifically. I just wanted to see his face. Noah, he didn't ask me what the discrepancy was. He didn't ask which quarter or which account or whether I'd told anyone. He just smiled and said he'd look into it. That smile. I've known Marcus 15 years and I've never seen him smile like that. I'm probably wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but if you're reading this, then I wasn't." Noah set the pages down on the desk. Madeline was still sitting on the floor, her back against the side of the desk, now the photograph in her lap. She'd said nothing while he read. She had simply waited, tracing the iron-on sun patch on her jacket with one finger around and around. "Can I ask what's in the picture?" Noah said. She looked down at it, then held it up for him to see. It was a photograph of 2 women. One was Eleanor younger, maybe 32 or 33, laughing at something off-camera, her hair loose. The other was a woman Noah recognized with a small jolt of memory, Grace. Younger, too, but recognizable. They were sitting on the steps of what looked like a brownstone, both holding paper coffee cups squinting into afternoon sun. "My mom kept it on her nightstand," Madeline said. "She said Mrs. Eleanor was the kindest person she ever worked for." Noah looked at Eleanor's face in the photograph for a long moment. That laugh. He had forgotten the specific quality of it, the way it arrived suddenly without build-up, like she found things funny in the same instant everyone else was still catching up. He put the photograph down gently and looked at the letter again. Account numbers, transfer dates, and one name circled once in the margin with no comment beneath it: Marcus Hale. Noah stood up. He moved to his desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up the company's internal financial dashboard. He still had full access CEO credentials, biometric confirmed. The dashboard loaded in seconds, and he navigated to the Treasury Management module, the one that tracked inter-account transfers above $20,000. He typed in the first date Eleanor had listed: November 14th, 3 years ago. The transfer appeared. $47,000, routed from a subsidiary operations account to an external vendor code he didn't recognize. He clicked the vendor code. It resolved to a consulting firm, Hallmark Advisory Partners, LLC, registered in Delaware. He typed the second date, another transfer. $52,000, same vendor code. Third date, $61,000, same vendor code. He sat back. These were not enormous amounts, not for a company the size of Ford Capital. They were the kind of numbers that would slip past a quarterly audit without triggering any automated flags. The kind of numbers someone careful would choose on purpose. He pulled up the vendor registration for a Hallmark Advisory Partners, LLC, incorporated 4 years ago. One listed officer. The name on the screen was not Marcus Hale. It was a name Noah didn't recognize at all, Derek Moss. He stared at it. Then he did something he rarely did anymore. He trusted the instinct that told him to go one level deeper. He opened a separate browser, pulled up the Delaware Business Registry, and searched Derek Moss alongside Hallmark Advisory Partners. 3 results. He clicked the second one. Derek Moss listed as registered agent. Primary contact for correspondence, M. Hale, M. Hale. Noah closed the laptop slowly. His hands were steady. His mind was not. He had known Marcus Hale for 15 years. They had built this company together from a storage unit and a term loan and 4 years of 70-hour weeks. Marcus had stood at the front of the room at Eleanor's funeral and said, "She made this place better just by being part of it." And Noah had gripped his shoulder and believed every word. He stood at his office window and looked at the city below, and he thought about Eleanor writing that letter 14 months before she died. Methodical, unafraid, trusting Grace to hold it safe. Trusting Grace's daughter, this 9-year-old girl sitting on his floor in a thin jacket, to carry it across the city one day when the time was right. The time is right, he thought. Whatever that means, it's now. He turned around. "Madeline," he said. "I need to make a phone call. It's going to take a few minutes. Are you hungry?" She looked at him with those steady dark eyes. "A little." "Thomas." Noah raised his voice toward the hallway. The old man appeared in the doorway. Within seconds he hadn't gone far. "Can you find something for her to eat, whatever's in the kitchen?" "Of course, sir." Madeline stood tucking the photograph carefully into the front pocket of her jacket. She paused at the doorway and looked back at Noah. "Is it bad?" she asked. "What's in the letter?" Noah looked at her for a moment. He thought about what the right answer was, the careful answer, the adult answer that protected a child from weight she didn't need to carry. Then he thought about the bus she had taken alone across the city at night. The lock she had studied and tested 3 times before she tried it. The way she had lain down on a hard floor and slept because she had promised her mother, and she was going to keep that promise no matter how long it took. She had already been carrying weight. She deserved honesty. "It's serious," he said, "but you did the right thing bringing it to me." She nodded once, like this confirmed something she had already decided. Then she followed Thomas down the hall. Noah picked up his phone. He scrolled to a number he hadn't called in 8 months, a number he'd kept without knowing exactly why, filed under a single initial. R. Ray Callahan picked up on the second ring. His voice was alert, not groggy, a man who didn't sleep deeply, or perhaps a man who had been expecting this call for some time. "Mr. Ford," Ray said. Noah paused. "You knew I'd call." A beat of silence. "Mrs. Eleanor told me that if you ever called this number, it meant the envelope had reached you." Another pause. "I've been waiting 3 years, sir." Noah exhaled slowly. "She said you would know what to do with it." He hadn't known 20 minutes ago, but he was beginning to. "I need to see you," Noah said. "Tonight." "I'll be there in 40 minutes," Ray said. "Don't talk to anyone in that building until I arrive. Not your security team, not your assistant." A slight pause waited with something Noah didn't yet fully understand. And not Marcus Hale. If this story is pulling you in, if you felt something when that little girl handed over that envelope, please take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We put everything into stories like this one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? We read every single one. Ray Callahan arrived at 12:43 a.m. He was not what Noah had expected, though Noah couldn't have said exactly what he had expected. A man in his early 50s, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of face that had been weathered by something more specific than age. The particular weathering of a man who had spent years watching people from a distance and had seen enough to stop being surprised. He wore a gray jacket, no tie, and carried a worn leather satchel that looked like it had been around longer than some marriages. Thomas brought him up without being asked. When Ray walked into Noah's office, he looked around once, quickly professionally, then set his satchel on the conference table and turned to face Noah. "You read all 3 pages?" Ray asked. "3 times," Noah said. Ray nodded. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and placed his hands flat on the table. "Then you know about the transfers. Hallmark Advisory Partners, Delaware LLC. Derek Moss as registered agent, Marcus Hale as primary contact." Noah sat across from him. "How long have you known?" "Eleanor hired me 4 months before she died," Ray said. "October 3 years ago. She found the first 2 transfers herself. She was sharper than people gave her credit for. She came to me because she didn't want to go to the company's internal compliance team. She wasn't sure yet who she could trust inside the building. She was right not to trust them," Noah said flatly. "She was." Ray reached into his satchel and withdrew a manila folder thick, the edges slightly compressed from years of sitting in the same bag. He slid it across the table. "Everything I found is in there. Bank records, shell company filings, photographs, and 2 recordings." He paused. "I want to be clear about the recordings before you listen to them. I obtained them legally. Eleanor consented to one of them. It's her voice. The other was recorded in a semi-public space with no reasonable expectation of privacy." Noah didn't open the folder yet. He looked at Ray. "Why didn't you go to the police after she died?" Ray was quiet for a moment. Not evasive thinking. Choosing words with the care of someone who had rehearsed this answer many times but still wanted to get it right. "2 reasons," he said. "First, what I had wasn't enough. It was enough to open an investigation, but not enough to close one. A good defense attorney would have had it dismissed inside of 6 months. Eleanor knew that. She was building toward something more complete." A pause. "Second, I didn't know who else was involved. If I went to the police and Marcus found out before we had everything, evidence disappears. Witnesses disappear." He looked at Noah steadily. "Grace had the envelope. She was the only person outside of me who knew the full picture. And she was a single mother with a 9-year-old daughter. I wasn't going to put a target on her back." The office was very quiet. From down the hall, Noah could hear the faint sound of Thomas talking to Madeline in the small kitchen. A low murmur, the scrape of a chair, something that might have been a microwave beeping. The ordinary sounds of someone being looked after. He opened the folder. The first page was a flowchart hand-drawn in blue pen on graph paper, the kind of meticulous diagram that came from someone who thought in systems. It traced the money from Ford Capital's subsidiary accounts through Hallmark Advisory Partners, then through 2 more shell companies in Nevada and Wyoming, before landing in a private account in the Cayman Islands. The amounts were listed at each node. Noah followed the trail with his finger adding as he went. He reached the final number and stopped. $4.2 million, he said. "Over 31 months, Ray confirmed. Small enough increments to stay below the automated audit thresholds. He knew your systems." Of course he did. Marcus had helped design those systems. Noah turned to the next page. Photographs, surveillance quality slightly grainy, time-stamped. Marcus entering a building Noah didn't recognize. Marcus at a restaurant leaning across a table toward a man with angular features and a gray suit. A third photograph, the same man handing Marcus what appeared to be a padded envelope in a parking garage. "Who is he?" Noah asked, pointing to the gray suit. "Conrad Ames," Ray said. "Financial consultant based in Greenwich. He's the one who set up the Cayman account and manages the shell company structures. He's done this kind of work before, different clients, different industries. He's very good at not leaving fingerprints." A pause. "We have him on the second recording." Noah looked up. "Eleanor recorded Conrad Ames." "No, I did. 6 weeks before Eleanor's accident. Ames met with a contact of mine at a bar in Stamford. My contact was wearing a wire. Ames didn't say anything explicitly incriminating, but he referenced a client who was, his words, restructuring his exposure ahead of a significant transition. He mentioned Ford Capital by name. Noah set the photograph down, restructuring his exposure ahead of a significant transition. He thought about what Marcus had placed on his desk 3 days ago, a proposal for a corporate restructuring. New holding structure reallocation of controlling shares, a board reorganization framed as a modernization initiative. Marcus had presented it with the calm confidence of someone delivering good news, explaining that the company's current structure was creating tax inefficiencies, that several board members had already reviewed it informally and found it sound. He had asked Noah to review it over the weekend. The signing meeting was scheduled for Thursday, 48 hours from now. Noah looked at Ray. "The restructuring proposal Marcus brought me this week, I know about it," Ray said. "How?" "Because I've been watching Marcus for 3 years, Mr. Ford. Not closely enough to know the specifics until recently, but enough to know he was still moving toward something." Ray leaned forward slightly. 2 weeks ago, one of Marcus's assistants, a young woman named Priya, who has no idea she's helping me, mentioned to a mutual acquaintance that Marcus had been working late every night for a month, that he seemed excited, that he'd told her things were finally coming together. Noah closed the folder. He stood and walked to the window again. The city below was thinner at this hour, fewer headlights, longer stretches of empty street. He thought about 15 years. He thought about the storage unit and the term loan, and the 4 years of 70-hour weeks, and Marcus across the desk from him at 2 in the morning, eating cold takeout and arguing about equity structures with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved the game. He had loved the game. Noah had never doubted that. He just hadn't understood until now that Marcus loved winning it more than he loved playing it with Noah. "There's something else," Ray said. Noah turned. Ray reached into the satchel a second time and withdrew a smaller folder, thinner rubber-banded. He set it on the table but kept his hand on it for a moment, as if deciding one more time whether to open it. "The accident report," Ray said. "The one filed by the state police after Eleanor died." Noah went still. "I obtained the original investigator's notes," Ray said. "Not the final report, the field notes. The first responders' handwritten observations from the scene." He opened the folder and turned it to face Noah. The guardrail impact pattern was inconsistent with the vehicle losing control on a wet road. The angle of contact suggests the car had already begun rotating before it reached the guardrail. The first responder noted it and flagged it for the reconstruction team. A pause. That flag never made it into the final report. Noah looked at the page. He saw the first responder's handwriting, hurried, abbreviated, the shorthand of someone documenting a scene quickly. He saw the word inconsistent circled. He saw a small arrow and a question mark. He looked up at Ray. "Are you telling me—" "I'm telling you what the evidence suggests," Ray said carefully. I'm not telling you I can prove it yet. The difference matters. He held Noah's gaze. But yes, I believe Eleanor's accident was not an accident. The air went out of the room. Noah stood at the window for a long time without speaking. Below him, Manhattan moved at its indifferent midnight pace, and somewhere in the small kitchen down the hall, Madeline was eating whatever Thomas had found for her sitting in her thin jacket with her mother's photograph tucked in her pocket, waiting patiently for a man she'd never met to figure out what to do with everything she'd carried across the city to give him. She said you would know what to do with it. He hadn't known. He was beginning to. He turned away from the window and looked at Ray Callahan. "What do we need," Noah said, "to make this airtight?" Ray almost smiled. It was a small thing, brief-controlled, but it was there. 2 things, Ray said. More time and grace. From down the hall, the microwave beeped again. Noah looked toward the sound. "Then we need grace to get better," he said quietly. "And we need to make sure no one knows this conversation happened." Ray reached into his jacket pocket and produced 2 small devices, both cell phone-sized, flat-matte black. He placed them on the table. "Signal blockers," he said. "I brought them in my bag. We've been clean since I walked in." He paused. "I've been doing this a long time, Mr. Ford. I know when someone is finally ready to move." He looked at Noah steadily. "Are you ready to move?" Noah picked up Eleanor's letter from the desk. He looked at his name in her handwriting one more time. Then he folded it, carefully put it back in the envelope, and put the envelope in his inside jacket pocket. Close. "Yes," he said. Thursday was 44 hours away. Noah sat at his desk after Ray left the manila folder open in front of him and did the math. 44 hours before Marcus expected him to sign. 44 hours to understand exactly what he would be signing away. He started with the restructuring proposal. He'd skimmed it 3 days ago, 42 pages of legal language dressed up in the vocabulary of efficiency and growth. He hadn't read it carefully because Marcus had presented it the way he presented everything, with complete confidence. A little humor, the easy fluency of a man who had never given Noah reason to doubt him. Noah had taken the document home, set it on his nightstand, and forgotten about it for 2 days. Now, he read every page. By the 3rd section, he understood. The proposal didn't just reorganize Ford Capital's holding structure. It created a new parent entity, Hale Ford Strategic Holdings, LLC, in which Noah retained a 49% stake. Voting rights were redistributed. A new executive committee appointed by the board would hold final authority on decisions above $50 million. The board itself would be reconstituted under the new structure, with 3 seats allocated to outside investors Noah had never heard of. He flipped to the signature page. 2 signature lines. Noah Ford, CEO. Marcus Hale, COO. Below that, a single line of boilerplate. Upon execution, all existing shareholder agreements and voting provisions shall be superseded by the terms of this instrument. Everything he had built. 49%, no veto. He closed the proposal and thought about the 3 outside investors. He wrote their names on a notepad, then pulled up his laptop and searched the first one. A holding company in the Cayman Islands. He searched the second. Another Cayman entity, different name, same registered address as the first. The third resolved to a Delaware LLC with no listed officers and no web presence. He sat back. 3 shell companies. The same architecture as Hallmark Advisory Partners. He was looking at Marcus's money. Laundered, restructured, dressed in new clothes, but his money. If Noah signed Thursday, Marcus wouldn't just own a controlling stake in Ford Capital through his hidden entities. He'd own it legally on paper in a document Noah had voluntarily executed. Every dollar Marcus had stolen from the company over 31 months would be converted in one afternoon into legitimate equity. It was elegant. Noah hated how elegant it was. He picked up the notepad and wrote one word at the top, Diane. Diane Cho had been Ford Capital's general counsel for 6 years. She was methodical, precise, and had a reputation for reading contracts with a forensic patience that made outside counsel nervous. Noah had trusted her with sensitive negotiations, confidential disputes, the kind of work that required absolute discretion. He understood now why Marcus had chosen her. Ray's folder included a single page on Diane, a telephone record obtained through a contact Ray declined to name, showing 47 calls between Diane's personal cell and an untraceable prepaid number over the past 8 months. The calls were short, regular, and always placed on weekends. The last one was 6 days ago. He also found a document, a modified insurance claim, filed 18 months after Eleanor's death, amending the original beneficiary designation on Eleanor's life insurance policy. The original policy taken out 11 years ago listed Noah as sole beneficiary. The amended document listed a trust, the Eleanor Ford Memorial Trust, administered by a law firm in Westport, Connecticut. Noah had never established a memorial trust. He had never signed any amendment to Eleanor's policy. The signature at the bottom of the amended document was his, or something close enough to his that it had passed through the insurance company's review without question. He had never seen this document before in his life. He looked at the notary stamp. The notary's license number was printed clearly at the bottom. He searched the name. The license was valid. The notary's registered business address was a shared office suite in Stamford, the same building where Ray had photographed Conrad Ames. Noah put the page down and pressed his palms flat on the desk. $8 million in Eleanor's life insurance had gone into a trust he hadn't created, administered by a law firm he'd never heard of. Diane had made it look clean. A forged signature, a cooperative notary, a firm far enough from New York to avoid easy scrutiny. $8 million. And 44 hours. He thought about Eleanor writing that letter 14 months before she died. I told Marcus I found an accounting discrepancy. He didn't ask what it was. He just smiled. She had seen it. A man who didn't flinch when he should have, because he already knew there was nothing to find that he hadn't already buried. At 2:15 a.m., Noah walked down the hall to the kitchen. Madeline was asleep again, this time on the small sofa in the break room. Thomas's jacket draped over her like a blanket. The photograph was in her hand again. She had eaten a bowl of the instant oatmeal Thomas kept in the cabinet, a glass of orange juice, half an apple that sat browning on a paper towel beside her. Noah stood in the doorway and looked at her, 9 years old. Her mother in a hospital bed across the city. She had taken a bus alone, navigated a building she'd never entered, and slept on a hardwood floor, for he checked his watch probably 4 hours before Thomas found her. She had done all of this because her mother had asked her to, and because somewhere in her 9-year-old understanding of the world, a promise was a promise. He thought about what Marcus had taken. The $4 million. The $8 million. The years of trust converted quietly into leverage. And Eleanor methodical, careful. Eleanor reduced to a car on a wet road and a flag that never made it into a final report. He thought about Madeline's mother in St. Raphael S. He thought about the fact that Marcus didn't know this envelope existed. That as far as Marcus knew, Thursday was still going to happen exactly the way he'd planned it. That was the only advantage Noah had, and he intended to use every hour of it. He went back to his desk and called Ray. Diane Cho forged Eleanor's insurance beneficiary amendment, Noah said when Ray picked up. I have the document. A pause. I suspected. I couldn't confirm it. The notary is connected to Conrad Ames. Same building in Stamford. That's the link we needed, Ray said. That's the thread that connects Marcus to Eleanor's policy directly. It's not just embezzlement anymore. No, Noah said, it's not. A longer pause. Outside, the first gray suggestion of dawn was beginning at the edge of the skyline, not light yet, just the absence of full dark. "Ray," Noah said, "if Marcus finds out Grace is alive and talking—" "I know," Ray said. "I have someone at St. Raphael's already. Has been since Tuesday." A beat. "Grace is safe, but we need to move before Thursday." "We will," Noah said. He looked at the folder on his desk, at Eleanor's letter in his jacket pocket, at the restructuring proposal with its 2 signature lines and its 49%, and its 3 shell companies wearing borrowed names. She said you would know what to do with it. He was beginning to know. Noah slept 3 hours on the office sofa and woke up feeling like a different person. Not rested, not calm, but different in the way a compass is different from a map. He had a direction now, where before he'd had only terrain. He showered in the executive washroom, changed into the spare shirt he kept in the closet behind his desk, and was at his desk with coffee before 7. Thomas had arranged for a car to take Madeline to St. Raphael's at 6:30. Before she left, Noah had crouched down to her level in the lobby and told her that her mother was being looked after, that she had done something very brave, and that he was going to need a few days to do what needed to be done. He had put Ray's number in her phone, a battered thing with a cracked screen, and a case decorated with small painted sunflowers, and told her to call it if anything felt wrong. She had looked at him with those steady eyes. "Are you going to fix it?" she asked. "I'm going to try," he said. She had considered this, then nodded. "My mom says trying is how you find out if you're the kind of person who can." He thought about that sentence for a long time after the car pulled away. Marcus arrived at 8:54. Noah heard him before he saw him, the particular rhythm of Marcus's walk slightly heavier on the left, the sound of his keycard on the executive floor entry, the brief exchange with the receptionist that always ended with her laughing at something he'd said. Marcus collected small warmths from people the way other men collected business cards. Noah had always admired it. He sat behind his desk and arranged his face. This was the part Ray had been clearest about the night before. You cannot let him know, not a flicker. Marcus has been managing your perception of him for years. He's good at it. You have to be better just for a few days. Noah was not an actor. He had never been good at performance. But he understood one thing about the next 44 hours: he didn't need to perform warmth. He just needed to perform normalcy. And normal for Noah Ford had always meant work. Marcus knocked on the open door and leaned against the frame. He was wearing a navy suit, no tie, the relaxed confidence of a man on the right side of a plan. He looked, as he always looked, like someone who'd already won whatever game was currently being played and was simply waiting for the other side to figure it out. "You're in early," Marcus said. "Couldn't sleep." Noah gestured at the chair across the desk. "Sit down. I want to go through the Hargrove account before the 9:30. Marcus sat. He set his coffee on the desk and pulled out his phone to check something, and for a moment they were just 2 men in an office doing what they had done 1,000 times, reviewing numbers, flagging issues, the ordinary machinery of running a company together. Noah watched him from behind the wall he'd built overnight. He watched the way Marcus held his coffee cup, left hand always thumb hooked through the handle. The way he tilted his head slightly right when he was reading something on his phone. The way he said right under his breath when he was agreeing with something, a small verbal tick Noah had stopped noticing years ago, and was now noticing again freshly, like a word you've said so many times it briefly stops making sense. 15 years. He thought about Eleanor's letter. He didn't ask what the discrepancy was, he just smiled. "You review the restructuring doc over the weekend?" Marcus asked. Casual, not looking up from his phone. "Started to," Noah said. "Got pulled into the Hargrove thing. I'll finish it tonight. Thursday's still good for you." "Thursday's fine." Marcus looked up then, and for just a fraction of a second, a quarter beat less, something moved behind his eyes. Not suspicion. Something more like relief quickly managed. He smiled. "Good," he said. "I think you're going to like what we've built here, Noah. It's clean, it's smart, it sets us up for the next decade." Noah looked at him. "I trust your judgment," he said. He had said those words to Marcus perhaps 200 times over 15 years. Marcus had always received them with a small, satisfied nod, not smug, just settled the nod of a man who felt appropriately valued. He gave that same nod now. Noah looked down at the Hargrove file and said nothing more. The rest of the morning passed in the ordinary choreography of a company that didn't know it was standing on a fault line. Noah sat through the 9:30 meeting. He reviewed 2 contracts with his assistant Paula. He took a call from an investor in Chicago and said the right things in the right order. He ate lunch at his desk, half a sandwich, black coffee, and while he ate, he read for the 3rd time the flowchart Ray had drawn on graph paper, the one that traced $4 million from Ford Capital's accounts through 3 shells and into the Cayman Islands. At 2 o'clock, Diane Cho knocked on his door. She was carrying a thin folder, the final execution copy of the restructuring proposal tabbed for signature. She set it on his desk with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 100 times, pointed to the tabs, explained the sequencing. Noah watched her hands as she talked. Steady, perfectly steady. She had forged his signature on an $8 million insurance document, and she was standing in his office explaining tab placement with the composure of someone who had long ago made peace with what she was. "Any questions before Thursday?" she asked. "Just one," Noah said. She looked up. The new parent entity, Haleford Strategic Holdings. Who drafted the name at T? A half-second pause. "Marcus suggested it. I thought it had a good ring." She smiled briefly. Alphabetical order would have put yours first, but he felt Haleford had better flow. "Right," Noah said. "Good to know." After she left, Noah sat very still for a moment. Then he picked up his phone and sent Ray a single text. "Diane is completely clean on the outside. She's good." Ray replied in under a minute. "So are we. FBI contact confirmed this morning. They want everything before we move. 2 more days." Noah put the phone face down on the desk. 2 more days of this. 2 more days of coffee cups and 9:30s and saying Thursday's fine to a man who had redirected $4 million and forged his dead wife's insurance documents. Oh, and if Ray was right, done something far worse on a wet road 3 years ago. He stood and walked to the window. The city was bright and indifferent below him, the same view he had looked at last night while Madeline slept on his floor in her thin jacket. He thought about what she'd said this morning before the car came. "My mom says trying is how you find out if you're the kind of person who can." He thought about Eleanor 14 months before she died, sitting somewhere in this building or at home at the kitchen table, writing 3 pages in steady handwriting and trusting them to a young woman with a sewing box and a daughter who wasn't born yet. Trusting that one day the time would be right. He looked at Marcus through the glass wall of the conference room, laughing at something on a call, leaning back in his chair, at ease in the world he was remaking. 2 more days, Noah thought. He could do 2 more days. Tuesday arrived cold and overcast. Noah was in the office by 7 again. He had slept better the second night, not well, but better. The kind of sleep that comes when a decision has been made and the body accepts it, even if the mind is still running the numbers. Ray called at 7:15. "Grace is conscious," he said. "Fully. She's been awake since yesterday evening. The doctors are calling it a strong recovery, faster than they expected." Noah exhaled. "Can she talk?" "She's talking. She's been asking about Madeline every 20 minutes. A pause. "She also confirmed everything in Eleanor's letter. On the record, I have it on audio. Does she know what we're doing? She knows enough. She wants to help." Ray's voice was measured. "She's stronger than she looks, Mr. Ford. Eleanor picked well." Noah thought about the photograph Eleanor and Grace on brownstone steps, paper coffee cups, afternoon sun. two women who had trusted each other with something that mattered. "Keep her safe," he said. "Already done. My contact at the hospital has eyes on her room. Nobody gets in without clearance." Noah hung up and sat for a moment with the morning quiet around him. Wednesday tomorrow. Thursday the day after. The shape of the next 48 hours felt very clear now. Each hour accounted for each move assigned. Ray had spoken with his FBI contact the previous afternoon. The wire authorization was in process. By tomorrow evening, Noah would be fitted with a recording device, and Thursday's signing meeting would become something other than what Marcus expected. The plan was clean. It was almost elegant. Then at 11:47, everything shifted. Noah was in a budget review when Paula appeared in the glass doorway of the conference room and gave him the look she reserved for things that couldn't wait. He excused himself and stepped into the hall. "Mr. Hale's assistant just called," Paula said quietly. "He's asking to move Thursday's signing to tomorrow afternoon. Says a board member has a scheduling conflict and needs to join remotely." Noah kept his face neutral. Which board member? She didn't say. Marcus wants to confirm by end of day. Noah said he'd get back to her and walked to his office. He closed the door and called Ray immediately. Ray picked up on the first ring. "I heard," he said. "How did you hear already?" "Because Marcus made 3 other calls before his assistant called Paula. I've had his office line monitored for 2 weeks. A beat. He's accelerating. Something spooked him." "What?" "I don't know yet. Could be nothing, a genuine scheduling issue. Could be he's getting anxious as Thursday gets closer and he wants it done." Ray's voice was careful. Or someone told him something. The word landed quietly between them. Someone. Noah sat down. "The FBI wire, can we be ready by tomorrow?" "Not officially. The authorization process takes—" Ray. A pause. "I'll make a call. Give me an hour." Another pause, shorter. "Don't confirm the meeting yet. Stall until I get back to you." Noah hung up and stared at the wall. He thought about the building's footprint. Marcus's office was 4 doors down. Diane's was at the end of the hall. Between them and Noah, every day moved a small ecosystem of assistants, analysts, associates, people who knew schedules and overheard conversations and relayed information the way buildings breathe without intention or malice, simply because information moves. He thought about who knew what. Paula knew about the restructuring meeting. She was loyal and had been with Noah 8 years, but loyalty didn't mean invulnerability. It meant she could be used by someone who knew how to seem ordinary. A casual question in the kitchen. A comment dropped near the elevator. Marcus was very good at casual questions. Then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, 7 digits, no area code, the kind of number that resolves to nothing if you try to call it back. They know about the girl. Noah read it twice, then a third time. He stood up slowly and walked to his window. Below the street moved at its usual midday pace cabs, pedestrians, a food cart trailing steam. Normal city, normal Tuesday. And somewhere in this building, Marcus Hale had learned that a 9-year-old girl had been in Noah's office Sunday night. He didn't know how. He didn't know how much Marcus knew, whether it was just that a child had been here, or whether he knew who she was, who her mother was, what she'd been carrying. But the acceleration made sense now. Moving the meeting forward wasn't about a board member's schedule. It was about closing the window before it closed on him. Noah called Ray back without waiting for the hour. "He knows about Madeline," Noah said. Silence on the line. Brief, controlled. "How certain are you?" "Certain enough. Someone texted me. Unknown number. 3 words. Don't reply to it." Ray's voice had shifted, not louder but denser, the way a man sounds when he stops assessing and starts moving. "I'm calling the hospital right now. Do not hang up. Stay on the line." Noah heard Ray's voice in the background, lower, rapid, speaking to someone else. A door closing. A pause that lasted perhaps 40 seconds and felt much longer. Then Ray came back. Grace is fine. Room is secure. Madeline is with her. She's been there since this morning. She hasn't left the hospital. Noah breathed. But we have a problem, Ray continued. If Marcus knows about the girl, he knows she came from somewhere. It won't take him long to connect her to Grace. And if he connects her to Grace, he'll know Grace has been talking. Yes. Another silence. Ray, Noah said. We need to move Madeline. Agreed. I'm sending someone to the hospital in the next 30 minutes. She and Grace will be relocated to a safe location. I have a place. A pause. But Noah, there's something else you need to understand. The use of his first name was new. Noah registered it. Marcus, moving the meeting forward isn't just about anxiety, Ray said. If he's willing to accelerate a plan he's been building for 3 years, it means he's calculated that the risk of waiting is now higher than the risk of moving fast. That's a different Marcus than the one who's been patient this whole time. A pause. He's going to make sure there are no loose ends before that meeting happens. The phrase sat in the air between them. No loose ends. Noah thought about Grace in her hospital bed. About Madeline with her cracked phone and her sunflower case. About a 9-year-old girl who had taken a bus across the city in November in a thin jacket because her mother asked her to, and who had slept on a hardwood floor because a promise was a promise. He thought about a wet road and a guardrail and a flag that never made it into a final report. Move them now, Noah said. Don't wait 30 minutes. Already calling, Ray said. And Ray the FBI wire. Whatever you have to do. Understood. A beat. One more thing. When Marcus comes to you to confirm the meeting, and he will come himself, not through his assistant, say yes. Don't hesitate. Give him nothing. I won't. He needs to believe Thursday is happening on his terms. The moment he thinks you know anything, the evidence disappears, and we lose everything Eleanor built. Ray's voice was steady and final. He's been careful for 3 years. We need one more day of him believing he's still the only one who's been careful. Noah stood at his window phone, pressed to his ear, watching the ordinary street below. At 12:31 p.m., Marcus knocked on his open office door. He was smiling. Relaxed. Navy suit again, different tie, burgundy, the same color as Madeline's jacket, and Noah noted this with a strange cold clarity. Hey, Marcus said. You get the message about moving Thursday up? Noah turned from the window and looked at the man he'd spent 15 years building something with. Yeah, Noah said. Tomorrow works. Marcus's smile widened. Perfect. I'll have Diane send the updated calendar invite. He paused, one hand on the door frame, easy and unhurried. You doing anything tonight? We could grab dinner, like the old days. Noah held his gaze. Let me see how the day goes. Marcus pointed at him, the old gesture, the one that meant good man, solid answer, and disappeared down the hall. Noah turned back to the window. One more day. Ray arrived at Noah's apartment at 9 that evening. Not the office this time. Noah had left the building at 6, said goodnight to Paula, nodded to the security desk, taken his usual car home to his apartment on the Upper West Side. The ordinary exit of a man with nothing unusual on his mind. He had even stopped at the dry cleaner on 74th Street to pick up 2 shirts because Marcus might have someone watching, and a man who stops at the dry cleaner is a man who is not preparing a trap. Ray came through the service entrance. He brought 2 people with him. The first was a woman named Agent Sandra Reeves, mid-40s, short hair, the kind of stillness that came from years of watching rooms. She set a small case on Noah's kitchen table and opened it without preamble. Inside a recording device no larger than a shirt button, a transmitter the size of a folded stick of gum, and a receiver unit that Ray would monitor from a car parked on the block. The second person was a younger man Ray introduced only as Cal, who sat near the door and said nothing for the entire meeting. The wire authorization came through at 4 this afternoon, Ray said. Sandra's with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. She's been building a parallel case on Conrad Ames for 18 months. Our cases overlap significantly. Sandra nodded once at Noah. Mr. Ford, what you've gathered in the last 72 hours fills gaps we've had for over a year. The insurance fraud alone is federal wire fraud forgery conspiracy. Combined with the embezzlement and what we believe about Eleanor's accident, we're looking at a substantial case, she paused. But we need tomorrow's meeting. We need Marcus to confirm the restructuring on record and ideally to say something that connects him directly to the insurance document or to Eleanor. How do I get him there? Noah asked. You don't force it, Sandra said. Forced confessions fall apart in court. What you do is give him space to be confident. Marcus believes tomorrow is his finish line, 3 years of work arriving at a single signature. Men at finish lines talk. They can't help it. She looked at Noah steadily. Your job is to seem like a man who is about to sign. Uncertain maybe, a little tired, not suspicious. Let him fill the silence. Noah nodded. Ray opened his folder on the table. Here's the meeting as Marcus has structured it. 10 a.m. in the main conference room. He booked it himself, which means he controls the room layout. Diane will be present as legal counsel. There will be a notary, a woman named Susan Park, who works with Diane's firm. Conrad Ames will join by video from Greenwich. Ames will be on the call, Noah said. He wants to watch, Ray said. 3 years of work. He wants to see it close. A pause. That's useful. The moment Ames appears on that screen, we have him connected to the transaction on record. Sandra's team will pull the video log. Sandra placed the recording device on the table in front of Noah. We'll wire you before you leave for the office tomorrow morning. The transmitter goes here. She touched a point just below his left collarbone, taped to skin under your shirt. The button mic goes on the jacket lapel. It looks like a standard metal button. Don't touch it once it's on. Noah looked at the small device. It weighed almost nothing. He thought about Eleanor's letter in his jacket pocket, where he'd kept it since Sunday night. He thought about the weight of that 3 pages ivory paper, barely anything on a scale, and how something could weigh almost nothing and also be the heaviest thing in the room. What about Madeline and Grace, he asked. Relocated last night, Ray said. Safe house in Westchester. My contact confirmed they arrived at 10:40 p.m. Grace is stable resting. Madeline, a small pause, almost a smile, apparently reorganized the kitchen cabinets this morning because she said they were inefficient. Noah looked at the table for a moment. Something moved in his chest, warm and brief and inconvenient. Nobody followed them, he asked. No, we swept the hospital room before they left, checked for tracking devices on Grace's belongings. Clean. Ray closed his folder. Marcus doesn't know where they are. Sandra leaned forward. Mr. Ford, I want to walk through the meeting sequence once more. Not because I think you'll forget, because I want you to hear it enough times that it becomes automatic tomorrow. Noah straightened in his chair. Go ahead. You arrive at 9:55. You greet Marcus normally. You sit in your usual seat, don't let him redirect you. When Diane presents the documents, you look through them slowly. Take your time. Ask 1 or 2 clarifying questions about the voting provisions. Nothing that signals alarm, just due diligence. The kind of questions you'd ask any contract. She paused. When Ames appears on the video call, acknowledge him by name. That puts him on record as present and a party to the transaction. And then you hesitate. Noah looked at her. Right before you sign, Sandra said. You pause. You look at the document. You say something like, I just want to make sure I understand the governance structure fully before I execute this. Then you ask Marcus directly, Walk me through what happens to controlling interest if I'm incapacitated or unavailable. Why that question? Sandra's expression didn't change. Because it's the question that tells him you're still manageable. Still thinking like a CEO protecting his legacy, not like a man who knows what's in that document. And because his answer will almost certainly reference the provisions he built to ensure controlled transfers to his entities. She paused. We want him to explain his own mechanism. In his own words. On record. Ray looked at Noah. It also gives him a moment to say something about Eleanor, not guaranteed, but men who have done what Marcus has done, they carry it. When they think they've won, sometimes it comes out sideways. A reference to why things needed to change, why the old structure wasn't working. His voice was careful and level. We don't need him to confess. We need him to place himself inside the design. The apartment was quiet. Outside, a siren moved up Columbus Avenue and faded north. Noah looked at the wire on his kitchen table. He thought about 15 years. He thought about the storage unit and the term loan and two men who had believed genuinely that they were building something together. He thought about the specific quality of that belief, the way it felt like foundations solid beneath everything unquestionable. The way you stop testing the floor because you've walked on it 1,000 times and it has never moved. He thought about Eleanor writing her letter. He didn't ask what the discrepancy was. She had tested the floor. She had pressed her heel down and felt the give. He hadn't. Not once in 15 years. That was the thing he'd been sitting with since Sunday night, not the betrayal, exactly, because the betrayal was Marcus's crime, and Marcus's weight to carry. The thing Noah sat with was his own absence. The hours he'd spent in this office and in conference rooms and on planes, while Eleanor had been in the same building or at home, or sitting on brownstone steps with Grace paying attention to things he had trained himself not to notice, because noticing felt like distraction. She had been right here. Watching, documenting, trusting. He had been 4 floors away looking at numbers. One more thing, Ray said. He reached into his satchel and placed a photograph on the table. Not a surveillance photo this time. A personal one, small, slightly faded. Noah recognized it immediately, the same image Madeline had been carrying. Eleanor and Grace on the brownstone steps, paper cups, afternoon sun. Noah looked at him. Madeline asked me to give it to you before the meeting, Ray said. She said, he glanced at a note on his phone, reading it precisely. She said, so he remembers who he's doing it for. Noah picked up the photograph. Eleanor laughing. That sudden, unannounced laugh. He hadn't let himself look at it properly Sunday night. He looked at it now. He sat with it for a long moment, and Ray and Sandra and the silent man at the door gave him that moment without comment, because some things don't require management. Then Noah set the photograph down gently beside the wire on his kitchen table and looked at Sandra. Walk me through it again, he said. From the beginning. Sandra nodded, and they went through it again. And again after that. Until Noah could feel each step in sequence without reaching for it, arrival greeting seat, documents, questions, aims on screen, hesitation, the question about incapacitation, and then the silence that would follow, in which Marcus Hale would explain in his own words the machinery he had built. At 11:45, Ray packed the case and stood to leave. At the door, he turned back once. Eleanor was a careful woman, he said. She built something that lasted 3 years and survived everything Marcus threw at it. She put it in the right hands. He looked at Noah. Tomorrow, you finish what she started. Noah held the door. Get some sleep. You too. The door closed. The apartment was quiet. Noah went to his desk and sat down. He placed Eleanor's photograph in front of him. He placed her letter beside it. He sat with both of them in the lamplight for a long time, not reading, not analyzing. Just present. For the first time in 3 years, fully present. At 12:30 he went to bed. He set his alarm for 6. He closed his eyes. He slept. Noah woke at 5:43, 17 minutes before the alarm. He lay still for a moment, looking at the ceiling running through the sequence Sandra had walked him through 4 times the night before. Arrival, greeting, seat, documents, questions. Aims on screen, hesitation, the question about incapacitation, the silence. He got up, made coffee, and stood at his kitchen window watching the street below come slowly to life. A delivery truck, a woman walking a dog, a man in a yellow jacket unlocking a bodega gate, the metal rolling up with the particular sound of a city beginning its day. Ordinary Wednesday, except it wasn't. Sandra arrived at 7:15. Cal was with her again, same position near the door, same silence. She wired Noah in the kitchen, the transmitter taped below his left collarbone, cool against his skin, the button on his jacket lapel so unremarkable he had to resist the urge to check it in the mirror. "Don't check it," Sandra said, reading him. "Once it's on, forget it's there. And you'll be Ray's car, half a block south. I'll be in the building. There's a maintenance room on the 32nd floor we cleared last night. 2 additional agents on floors 33 and 35. She snapped her case shut. "The moment we have enough on record, I come to you. You'll know when I walk in." "How will I know?" "Because I'll knock twice and open the door without waiting for an answer." She looked at him. "It's your signal to step back from the table." Noah nodded. He put on his jacket. He picked up Eleanor's photograph from the desk and looked at it one more time. Then he placed it in his inside breast pocket behind Eleanor's letter. He took the car at 8:15. The usual driver, the usual route. He watched the city pass the window and thought about nothing in particular, which was the only way he knew to keep his face from showing what was underneath it. He arrived at 9:53. The lobby was normal. Security desk, the same guard who'd been there 6 years, who nodded and said good morning the way he always did. The elevator, the 34th floor. Paula at her desk with coffee, who told him his 9 o'clock had confirmed and asked if he wanted his calls held until after the meeting. He said yes. He said thank you. He walked to his office and stood at his window for 4 minutes. At 9:59 he walked to the main conference room. Marcus was already there. He was standing at the head of the table reviewing something on his phone jacket on tie straight. The room had been prepared, a leather portfolio at each seat. Water glasses already poured a small credenza along the wall with the video conferencing unit warmed up and ready. Diane sat to Marcus's right, her own folder-open pen uncapped. The notary, Susan Park, sat at the far end, a small woman in a gray blazer, a notary stamp and ink pad arranged precisely in front of her. 4 seats, 1 empty Noah's at the opposite end from Susan Park. Noah. Marcus looked up and smiled. The easy smile, the one that had never given anything away in 15 years and was not giving anything away now. Right on time. "Always," Noah said. He set his hand briefly on the back of his chair and did not sit yet. He looked at the video conferencing screen. Dark. Ames, joining at 10. "Should be on in a few minutes," Marcus said. "He's dialing in from his office." A pause, the smallest beat. "You know Conrad, he likes to observe the formal close, ceremonial type." "Sure," Noah said. He sat down. Diane slid a copy of the execution document across the table, the same 42 pages, freshly printed, tabbed in 5 places. She walked him through the tabs with the efficient calm of someone who had done this many times. Tab 1, Corporate Restructuring Authorization. Tab 2, Share Transfer Instrument. Tab 3, Governance Amendment. Tab 4, Officer Certification. Tab 5, Notarization. Noah turned the pages slowly. He asked about the voting provisions in Section 7.3, the question Sandra had suggested. A clarifying question, nothing more. Diane answered it without hesitation, the explanation crisp and complete. Marcus watched from the head of the table with his hands folded, the particular stillness of a man monitoring something he expects to go exactly as planned. At 10:04, the video screen brightened. Conrad Ames appeared, 50s silver hair, a window behind him showing winter trees and pale sky. He was dressed formally, dark jacket, white shirt, and he sat with the composed attention of someone who had specifically cleared his calendar for this moment. "Morning all," Ames said. His voice was smooth-calibrated. "Conrad," Marcus said. "We're just about ready." "Excellent." Ames's eyes moved to Noah. "Mr. Ford, looking forward to getting this done." "Conrad Ames," Noah said, making sure the name was clear. "Good to have you with us." Ames smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." Noah turned back to the document. He read section 7.3 again, or appeared to. Under the table, his left hand was flat against his thigh, completely still. He turned to page 38. The signature page, 2 lines. His name pre-printed in gray beneath the first. Marcus's beneath the second. He picked up the pen, and then he stopped. He set the pen down. "Sorry," he said. "Before I execute, I want to make sure I understand one provision fully." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Of course." "The governance structure." Noah looked at the document, then up at Marcus. "Walk me through what happens to controlling interest if I'm incapacitated, or unavailable for an extended period." A half-second, less. "It's standard language," Marcus said. "The executive committee assumes operational authority. Decisions above $50 million go to the committee until the CEO is able to resume. And the committee is appointed how? By the board under the new structure." Marcus's voice was even helpful. 3 of the 5 board seats under the restructuring go to the outside investors. You've seen their credentials. The committee reflects that composition. "The outside investors," Noah said. "Walk me through them again." Something moved in Marcus's jaw. Not visible, almost. A tightening, quickly released. "We've been over this," Marcus said. The first note, faint but there. A fraction of an edge beneath the helpful tone. "I know. I want to hear it again before I sign." Noah kept his voice mild. "Indulge me." Marcus unfolded his hands and placed them flat on the table. "Vertex Capital Partners, Hallmark Strategic Group, and Blue Ridge Holdings. All 3 have reviewed the proposal independently and—" "Hallmark Strategic Group," Noah said. Marcus stopped. "Is that related to Hallmark Advisory Partners?" Noah asked. "The Delaware LLC?" The room changed. Not loudly, no sound, no movement, but it changed the way a room changes when something hidden in it becomes briefly visible like a shape behind glass. Diane's pen stopped moving. Susan Park looked at her notary stamp. Ames on the screen was perfectly still. And Marcus Hale looked at Noah Ford for exactly 2 seconds with an expression that was not a smile, and was not anger, and was not fear. It was the expression of a man who has just understood that the floor he thought was solid has moved. Then he recovered. Smooth, fast professional. "Different entity," he said. "Similar naming convention. It caused some confusion internally, too. I can have Diane pull the registration documents if you want to compare." "That would be helpful," Noah said. Diane opened her folder. Her movements were measured, unhurried, but her left hand, the one not holding the folder, pressed flat against the table in a way that was almost identical to what Noah's hand was doing under it. They were both holding very still, for completely different reasons. Marcus looked at Noah with the patient expression of a man waiting for a misunderstanding to resolve itself. "Noah, we've spent 8 months building this. The board has reviewed it. Legal has reviewed it. 3 independent advisors have signed off. You know this document." "I do," Noah said. Then let's close it. Noah looked at the signature page. He picked up the pen again. He held it, and from somewhere behind him down the hall he heard footsteps. No rushing measured. The sound of someone who knew exactly where they were going. 2 knocks on the conference room door. It opened without waiting for an answer. Sandra walked in. She was in a dark jacket, credentials on a lanyard, 2 agents behind her. She looked at Noah, first one clear glance the signal, and Noah set the pen down and pushed back from the table. Marcus stood up. "What is this?" "Mr. Hale." Sandra's voice was level, almost quiet. "I'm Special Agent Sandra Reeves, FBI Financial Crimes. I have a warrant for your arrest and for the seizure of documents in this room." She placed the warrant on the table in front of him without drama. "Please step away from the table." Marcus looked at the warrant. He looked at Noah, and for the first time in 15 years Noah saw something genuine in Marcus Hale's face. Not the managed warmth or the easy confidence or the smile that arrived on schedule. Something underneath, all of that older, rawer. He had known this moment might come. He had simply believed completely, and until this second, that he had made it impossible. "Noah," Marcus said. His voice had changed, not pleading something quieter than that. Almost wondering. "How long have you known?" Noah looked at him across the table. Across 15 years, across everything. "Since Sunday night," he said. Marcus nodded once, slowly, like a man accepting a final score. Diane had not moved from her chair. One of the agents was speaking to her quietly. Ames on the screen had disconnected the window behind him, replaced by a gray default image, but Sandra had already noted the video log was preserved. Susan Park, the notary, sat with her hands in her lap and looked at no one. Noah stood. He straightened his jacket. He looked at Marcus one more time, this man he had trusted, this man who had stood at Eleanor's funeral and said she had made the place better just by being part of it. He had nothing left to say to him. He walked to the door. In the hallway, Paula was standing with her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. 2 more agents were moving through the floor. Someone in accounting had stood up from their desk and was watching through the glass. Noah stopped in the hallway and stood still for a moment. The transmitter was still taped below his collarbone. The button was still on his lapel. Eleanor's photograph was still in his inside pocket behind her letter. He reached in and touched the edge of the photograph, just briefly. Then he walked to his office, sat at his desk and looked at the city below, the same view, the same indifferent Manhattan morning, and waited for whatever came next. The next 4 hours were the most bureaucratic of Noah's life. Agents moved through the floor in pairs, methodical and unhurried, boxing documents and hard drives with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this many times before. Paula fielded calls from the lobby from board members, from 3 journalists who had somehow already heard something. Noah told her to say nothing to anyone and to route everything to the company's outside counsel. He sat in his office and answered Sandra's questions. She had a recorder on the desk between them, small silver blinking red. She asked about the restructuring proposal, the transfer dates Eleanor had documented, the insurance amendment, the connection between Hallmark Advisory Partners and Hallmark Strategic Group. Noah answered each question fully and precisely, the way he had answered questions his entire professional life. Factual, chronological, no editorializing. At one point, Sandra paused and looked at him. "You're very calm," she said. "I've been preparing for this conversation since Sunday night," Noah said. "I had time to get the emotions out of the way." That wasn't entirely true, but it was true enough. Marcus was taken to the FBI's field office in Lower Manhattan at 11:45. Noah didn't watch him leave. He heard about it from Ray, who called from the street, 2 agents, a black SUV, Marcus, walking between them in his navy suit with his hands in front of him looking at the pavement. No spectacle, no raised voices, just the quiet grinding machinery of consequence. Diane Cho was detained separately in a conference room on the 32nd floor Sandra's team had commandeered. Ray told Noah that she had requested a lawyer within 30 seconds of Sandra reading her rights, which Ray said was the smartest thing she'd done in 3 years. Conrad Ames was picked up at his office in Greenwich at 11:02 by agents from the Connecticut field office. He had not disconnected his video feed voluntarily. His internet had simply gone down because Sandra's team had coordinated with his building's IT provider. By the time he understood what was happening, 2 agents were already in his lobby. Noah learned all of this in pieces by phone through the long afternoon. At 2:15, Ray came to the office. He sat in the chair across from Noah's desk and put his satchel on the floor and looked at Noah with the straightforward assessment of a man taking inventory. "How are you?" Ray asked. "I don't know yet," Noah said. It was the most honest answer he had. Ray nodded. He seemed to accept this as reasonable. "The FBI is satisfied with what they got on the wire." Marcus confirmed the governance structure in enough detail to establish intent. Ames being on the call puts him inside the transaction. Diane's going to cooperate. Sandra told me 20 minutes ago. She's already talking. What is she saying? Ray reached into his satchel and produced a single printed page. A summary, 6 bullet points. He slid it across the desk. The insurance amendment was her work. She forged your signature, coordinated with the notary in Stamford, and arranged for the funds to route through the Eleanor Ford Memorial Trust to an account Marcus controlled in the Cayman Islands. A pause. The trust was dissolved 6 months after the funds cleared. $8 million laundered through 3 subsequent transfers. Noah read the page. He read it the way he had read Eleanor's letter, not fast, not slow, just fully. She's also confirmed, Ray said, that Marcus told her about the accident. Noah looked up. Not in detail, Ray said carefully. She says he came to her 3 weeks after Eleanor died and told her that a problem had been resolved and that they needed to move quickly on the insurance amendment before the estate settled. She asked him what problem. He told her she didn't need to know. Ray paused. She says she understood what that meant and she chose not to ask again. The room was quiet. Noah set the page down. She knew, he said. She suspected, Ray said. There's a legal distinction. Her lawyer will argue the distinction aggressively. A pause. But yes, she knew. Noah looked at the wall for a moment. At the framed photo of the Ford Capital founding team, 8 people, a storage unit behind them, everyone squinting into the camera because the sun was in their eyes. Marcus on the left grinning. Noah on the right not quite smiling, already looking at something off to the side that he couldn't remember now. He took the frame off the wall and placed it face down on the desk. "What about Marcus?" Noah asked. "Has he said anything?" Ray was quiet for a moment. "He asked to speak with you." Noah looked at him. "Sandra told him it wasn't possible," Ray said. He asked again. She told him the same thing. A pause. He said, and I'm reading this from Sandra's notes, "Tell Noah that Eleanor figured it out. Tell him she was smarter than both of us." The sentence arrived in the room and stayed there. Noah sat very still. He thought about Eleanor at the kitchen table, writing 3 pages in steady handwriting. He thought about her choosing Grace, choosing the sewing box, choosing to build something that would last even if she didn't. He thought about her on the brownstone steps in the photograph, laughing at something off camera, unaware, or perhaps entirely aware that the moment was being preserved. She was smarter than both of us. Coming from Marcus, it was not an apology. It was not remorse. It was the particular tribute of a man who had spent 3 years underestimating someone and had finally too late understood the full measure of what he'd done. Noah didn't respond. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out Eleanor's letter. He unfolded it for the fourth time and read the last paragraph, the one he had not read aloud to anyone, had not discussed with Ray, or Sandra had kept for himself. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I hope you don't, because if you do, it means something I don't want to think about. But if you are reading it, if you're sitting in that office at some late hour the way you always do, I want you to know that I wasn't afraid. I was careful, but I wasn't afraid. You taught me that. Build the thing right, and it holds. Take care of yourself, Noah. Take care of the company, and if Grace ever needs anything for herself or her daughter, please. I love you. I always will. E. He folded the letter. He put it back in his pocket. He picked up his phone and called Ray's contact at the safe house in Westchester. A woman answered not Ray's contact. A voice he recognized from 3 years ago, quieter now, slightly tired but unmistakably the same. "Grace," he said. A pause. "Mr. Ford." "I'm sorry it took me this long," he said. Another pause longer. When she spoke again, her voice was careful and warm and a little unsteady. "She said you'd figure it out. She always said that about you." Noah closed his eyes briefly. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The doctors here are very kind." A pause. "Madeline has been asking about you." "Can I speak with her?" A shuffling sound. A door. Then a voice he recognized, direct, unhurried, the voice of a child who had long ago decided that the world was navigable if you paid enough attention to it. "Mr. Ford," Madeline said. "It's done," Noah said. A pause. "Did you fix it?" He thought about Marcus in a black SUV, about Diane asking for her lawyer, about Conrad Ames in a lobby in Greenwich with 2 agents waiting, about Eleanor's letter in his pocket and her photograph behind it. "Yes," he said, "I fixed it." He heard Madeline breathe a long, quiet exhale, the sound of something set down. "Good," she said. Simply, like she had expected nothing less. At 4 o'clock, Noah asked Paula to hold everything and walked out of the building alone. He walked north on 5th Avenue without a destination. The afternoon was cold, sharp-edged, the kind of November day that makes the city look cleaned. He passed the park. He passed a flower cart. He passed a school, letting out a tide of children in coats and backpacks moving in every direction at once, with the beautiful disorder of people who don't yet know how complicated things become. He walked for 40 minutes. He ended up on a block he hadn't been on in 3 years, a brownstone on West 84th Street, its front steps empty now, its window boxes bare for winter. He stood on the pavement in front of it and looked at it. This was the block in the photograph. The brownstone steps. The afternoon sun that had made Eleanor and Grace squint into the camera. He stood there for a while. Then he took the photograph out of his pocket and held it in front of him, matching the steps in the image to the steps in front of him. Same iron railing. Same crack in the 3rd step from the bottom. Same building. Same steps. Different afternoon. He stood there until the cold moved through his jacket, and then he put the photograph away carefully and turned back toward the street. He had a company to run, a board to address, lawyers to brief, a governance structure to dismantle and rebuild without the architecture of someone else's theft running through it. Months of work, possibly years. He had Grace to take care of. He had Madeline. He walked south. The city moved around him. A siren somewhere to the east, a cab changing lanes. A woman on a corner laughing at her phone with the full sudden abandon of someone who finds things funny in the same instant everyone else is still catching up. He stopped walking for just a second. Then he kept going. 6 months later, the city was warm again. May arrived the way it always does in New York, suddenly, almost apologetically, as if making up for the long gray months before it. The trees in Central Park were fully green. The flower carts on 5th Avenue had switched from tulips to peonies. People sat on steps and stoops and benches with their faces turned towards the sun like they were trying to memorize it before it left again. Noah noticed all of this. He was noticing things differently now. He couldn't have said exactly when it started, sometime in the weeks after November, sometime between the board meetings and the depositions and the long evenings in his apartment reviewing documents with outside counsel. Somewhere in all of that, the habit had returned, the one Eleanor had always had, paying attention to small things. He was working on it. Marcus Hale pleaded guilty in March. The federal charges included wire fraud securities, fraud conspiracy to commit money laundering, and one count of obstruction of justice in connection with the investigation into Eleanor's death. The obstruction charge carried the heaviest weight. His attorney had negotiated aggressively. Marcus was 51, no prior record, a decade of genuine contributions to the company he had ultimately tried to steal, but the evidence was comprehensive and the prosecution was patient, and in the end the negotiation produced a sentence of 14 years. He would be 65 when he was eligible for release. Noah was not in the courtroom when Marcus entered his plea. He had considered going. He had stood in his apartment that morning in his coat and looked at the door for a long time. Then he had taken his coat off and gone to the office instead. There was nothing he needed from that room. Diane Cho received 4 years in exchange for her full cooperation. She had provided the FBI with documentation that proved the insurance amendment, the notary coordination, and 3 additional financial irregularities that Marcus's lawyers had hoped to keep buried. She had also provided a written statement confirming that Marcus had told her in the weeks after Eleanor's death that a problem had been resolved. It was not enough to charge him with Eleanor's death directly. The evidence was circumstantial, the first responders' notes, the inconsistent guardrail pattern, the timing, and the prosecutor was honest with Noah about what a trial would require. It would be long. It would be contested. It would put Eleanor's final months into a public record dissected and argued over by people who had never known her. Noah had thought about it for 2 weeks. Then he had called Sandra. "The obstruction charge is real," he said. "The financial charges are real. He is going to prison for 14 years. Is that justice?" Sandra had been quiet for a moment. "It's the justice we can prove," she said. "Then let it be enough," Noah said. He had meant it. Most days, he still meant it. Conrad Ames was convicted on 5 federal counts and sentenced to 8 years. The notary in Stamford surrendered her license and received 3 years probation. The shell companies were dissolved, their assets seized. The Eleanor Ford Memorial Trust, which had never funded a single scholarship or supported a single cause which had existed only as a vessel for stolen money, was formally closed by court order in February. The $8 million was in federal custody, its eventual disposition pending civil proceedings. Ford Capital Group had survived. Not undamaged, the restructuring investigation had been public, the headlines had been uncomfortable. 2 institutional investors had pulled out in December and taken their capital with them. But the company had held. The remaining board had moved quickly to establish interim governance, and Noah had spent the winter doing what he had always been best at working: rebuilding, turning numbers back into something that made sense. In April, he had promoted Ray Callahan's niece, a sharp young woman named Tessa, who had joined the compliance team 2 years earlier and had apparently been quietly flagging anomalies in the Treasury reports for months without knowing what she was seeing, to head of internal audit. She had asked on her first day in the new role whether she could restructure the automated flagging thresholds. Noah had said yes immediately. Grace came back to work in April. Not to Ford Capital, she had her own path now, her own plans, a graduate program in nonprofit administration she had deferred twice and was no longer willing to defer. But she came to see Noah on a Tuesday morning in early April, and they sat in his office with coffee and talked for 2 hours about Eleanor. Not about the letter or the investigation or the legal proceedings. About Eleanor herself, the way she thought, the things she cared about. The particular quality of her attention, which Grace described as she searched for the word anchoring. Like being near her made you feel that whatever you were doing mattered. Noah had listened to all of it. He had asked questions he'd never thought to ask when Eleanor was alive, questions about her days and her opinions and the things she'd said that Grace had written down in a small notebook because she'd wanted to remember them. Grace had brought the notebook. They sat for 2 hours, and Noah listened to his wife through the memory of a woman who had loved her and paid attention and written things down. When Grace stood to leave, she paused at the door. "She talked about you a lot," Grace said. "In a good way. She said you were the most capable person she'd ever met, and the worst at being still." A small smile. "She said she hoped someday you'd learn to just stop and look around." Noah looked at her. She was right. She usually was, Grace said. The Eleanor Ford Foundation was established in May. Noah had been planning it since December, working with a nonprofit attorney and a small advisory board to structure it properly. Its focus was educational access for children in underserved communities, tutoring programs, scholarship support, after-school enrichment. The kind of quiet infrastructural work that doesn't make headlines but accumulates year after year into something real. The Foundation's first scholarship recipient was announced on a Tuesday morning. Her name was Madeline. Noah drove to Westchester himself to tell her. Grace had moved into a small apartment in White Plains 3 weeks earlier, a fresh start, she'd said, somewhere with good schools and a reasonable commute to her graduate program. The apartment was on the second floor of a yellow building with a parking lot full of bikes and a community garden just starting to come up along the south fence. Madeline answered the door before he knocked. She had been watching from the window. "You're early," she said. "I know," he said. "I couldn't wait." She let him in. The apartment was small and clean and decorated with the particular intentionality of someone who has moved often and learned to make a space feel like theirs quickly. There were plants on the windowsill, a bookshelf arranged by color. On the refrigerator, held up by a single magnet, was the photograph Eleanor and Grace on the brownstone steps, Paper Cups Afternoon Sun. Grace had printed a new copy, larger, and framed it. Madeline had moved the frame to the refrigerator because she had explained to Grace that was the place in a kitchen you looked at the most. Grace came in from the other room, drying her hands on a dish towel. She looked at Noah, then at Madeline, then back at Noah. "Well," she said. Noah looked at Madeline. She was wearing jeans and a yellow sweatshirt, a different shade from the iron-on sun patch, but close. Her hair was in 2 braids. She was looking at him with those steady dark eyes, waiting with the particular patience of someone who has learned that waiting is sometimes the most powerful thing you can do. "The Eleanor Ford Foundation," Noah said, "is awarding its first scholarship to support your education from now through college. Fully funded, everything." Madeline looked at him. She was quiet for a moment, long enough that Noah wondered if he had misjudged the delivery, if he should have built up to it more, if 9-year-olds processed news differently than he remembered. Then she turned to Grace. "Mom," she said, "I told you." Grace laughed, sudden, unannounced, the kind that arrives before you're ready for it, and covered her mouth with the dish towel. And Noah stood in the kitchen doorway of a small apartment in White Plains, and felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled for 3 years. He stayed for lunch. Thomas had sent food, an entire insulated bag of it, more than 3 people could reasonably eat, which was Thomas's way of expressing feelings he didn't otherwise articulate. They ate at the small kitchen table with the window open and the sound of the parking lot below, and the photograph of Eleanor on the refrigerator. Madeline told Noah about her school, about a science project involving water filtration that she had redesigned twice because the first 2 versions weren't efficient enough, about a book she was reading that she thought he should read too, a biography of a bridge engineer, which she recommended on the grounds that understanding how things hold together was useful regardless of your profession. Noah said he would read it. He meant it. After lunch, while Grace washed dishes, Noah and Madeline sat on the small balcony in the May sun. Below them, the community garden was coming up early. Green things, careful rows, the small ambitious signs of people who had put something in the ground and were waiting to see what it became. "Are you okay?" Madeline asked. It was a direct question the way her questions always were. Not casual, not rhetorical, she actually wanted to know. Noah looked at the garden below. He thought about November, about the hardwood floor and the thin jacket and the envelope pressed against a small chest, with the ferocity of someone who understood even without being told that some things are worth protecting, because the person who created them is no longer there to do it themselves. He thought about Eleanor's letter. Build the thing right, and it holds. "I'm getting there," he said. Madeline considered this. "My mom says getting there is the whole point, that if you were already there, you'd stop paying attention." Noah looked at her. 9 years old. 10 in August, she had mentioned this at lunch with the mild anticipation of someone who considers birthdays primarily logistical. "Your mom is very wise," he said. "I know," Madeline said. "I've been telling her that for years." Noah smiled. It arrived without warning, the way smiles do when something finds you unprepared for it, and he let it stay. Below them, the garden moved in a small afternoon breeze. The green things bent and straightened, the careful rows held. Life rarely warns us before it changes. It doesn't send letters or make appointments. It simply arrives sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes on a hardwood floor, sometimes in the steady hands of a 9-year-old girl who made a promise and kept it. What Madeline carried across that city was more than an envelope. It was proof that the people who love us are paying attention even when we aren't. That the things built with care, a letter of trust, a quiet decision to do the right thing outlast the people who build them. If you took something from this story, let it be this look around. The people near you are carrying things you haven't thought to ask about. The ones who love you are watching, remembering building something for you to find when the time is right. Don't wait 3 years, look now. If this story moved you, please leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from tonight. Like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one. We read every comment, every single one, and your support is what makes these stories possible.